Hey guys, this is Faster U4 brought to you by FitLab, Tailwind Nutrition, Biomax and Capital Cycles. If you're a cyclist, you want to go faster? Then let's giddy up. Hey guys, welcome back to Faster U4 brought to you by FitLab, Tailwind Nutrition, Biomax and Capital Cycles, the new and improved Capital Cycles lately, by the way. I recommend paying them a visit. So, sorry, it's been a couple of weeks since I last did one of these. There's been a couple of things happening in my life which has kind of put it off. Number one being that my mum, Judy, passed away last week. It was a bummer. Not really looking for any sympathy on that. I just to let you know that's kind of why. I've been busy preparing the hospice and helping the family organise funeral and all that. So that's a pretty kind of an interesting thing to go through as a middle-aged dude having a parent die. Mum was relatively young. She was only about 16 or 17 or something when she got cancer. And a very sort of protracted fight with that. She lost. And I did this eulogy and I said that, you know, like even though I didn't really get to sit down with Mum and have her sort of announce lessons on life to me in a condensed form, you know, I was thinking back about it and I thought she did give me a lot of lessons on life just through her actions in life. And I thought back about the times when she showed me, in particular, about tenacity and grit in life. My dad once said to me, kind of my superpower was just really that I was gritty, which is kind of one way of saying you're not really good at anything, but at least you kind of stick with it. And maybe it's probably the same in cycling, is I'm not really that good at anything, but I kind of stick with it and I try my best, and I've learnt some lessons along the way. And Mum, when she rescued her mother who had a stroke in Hong Kong, in about 1986, with no GPS or internet, and when she went through some hard times in life, demonstrated that sort of tenacity to me, and I think that's partly where I picked it up from. So, rest in peace, Mum. Thank you for everything. Weirdly, even though you were never interested, particularly in cycling, and I'm not saying you should have been, or really never had anything to do with cycling, one way or another you did teach me some things that applied to cycling, so thank you. Right, so the other three things I'll talk about this week are just what went down at the North Island Team Series race, number 1 3 weeks ago. And it's up here. I'll give you the quick rundown. What happened in Master 1. We had we were the best team there. There we go. FitLab, we had a full contingent. A lot of other teams were down. And an interesting thing happened to make it short. We sent a team meeting and decided that we would send Scott McDonnell, excellent all-round rider from FitLab, up the road early, with whoever else, preferably Ben Knight, who was good, and those two guys did go up the road in the first 5Ks, got a good lead. None of the other teams were really strong enough to control the race very well, and those guys, with Tej Knutsford from GP Mayo, stayed away for most of the race. Scott was the strongest, managed to break away from those two just before the hill out of Martinborough, and behind the race was shredded in the crosswinds down the eastern side of the lake, down here, by some attacking moves from guys like Andy Hagan and other Wheelworks guys, and Brendan McGrath. It didn't really come to much. We did get rid of a lot of guys, but they weren't able to get rid of me and some other fit lab riders who were able to really strongly control guys like Andy being up the front. I could put my guys on the front, hold them, and it was excellent teamwork. Up the climb to from Martinborough, we could see Scott from my team up the road, about only 20 seconds up the road. So we had a position in the final 10 Ks of the race where me, Brendan McGrath, Andy Hagan, a couple of other guys, the female rider from Wheelworks, sorry, should have remembered her name better, was also in the selection. And it's good to say that Andy was getting a little frustrated that their riders were having such an easy ride, but there was no way I was going to chase down a rider of the quality of Scotty when he was doing so well at the front. Andy did comment to me at one stage that Scotty was going to be toasted and that I should start working on the front more because Scotty wouldn't make it. Well, I'm pleased to tell you that coming in, despite some giant turns, especially from Andy on the front, Kate McElroy, so the rider, doing a great job at Wheelworks, despite Andy doing a great job, especially for Kate coming to the last 5Ks, Scott, like a complete maniac, paced his ride perfectly. I've got Scotty's data, which I will not be showing you, but suffice to say, he did not panic, he just sat on his tested threshold like a pure time trialist and perfectly timed it so that he was covering the ground as fast as humanly possible. He's a good rider, he's able to put out high levels of power for a long period of time in the drops in the zero position, compact rider. And so the way it played out was, came to a sprint between me, Kate McElroy was in the mix, a couple of other riders, Brendan McGrath, and so Scott won the race, stayed off the front, and I think the margin in the end between Scott and all of us riding up behind him sprinting might have been less than 5 metres. So in terms of time, 1 to 2 seconds or something like that. Now that, ladies and gents, is what we call a well-paced ride from Scott McDonnell to take out the win. There was a very close sprint between me and Nicholas Monroy for second. Millimetres in it, Nicholas taking it over me by a few millimetres for second place, me in third, Brendan McGrath in fourth, and Kate McElroy somewhere in the top 5 there, which was fantastic to see a woman riding so strongly, especially on a flat course. Fantastic. So that's how it worked out. Good points in the bag for Fit Lab, good points in the bag for me, good points for Scotty. Now, a bit of a secret, my head is not 100% the right place, and neither is my back, fortunately. Got a few body niggles, and a few head niggles from the aforementioned issues that have come up over the last couple of weeks. Quite what role I will play. North Island Team Series 2 coming up this weekend is a little bit up in the air. But one thing I do know is that ultimately Fit Lab will be there they'll be strong, and they'll be picking up points, and I'll be there in some way to help. So a good first race. One thing I'll say about it is, if you look at the data, it's just insanely easy for the first half hour down the side of the western side of the lake, because no one was doing much chasing. Look, my average power is 196 watts. So just starting, just floating around near the front of the boat, watching what's going on. While Scotty, Ian Knight, Steve Shasford rolled up the road. You can see here from the bottom corner of the lake, the pace really went on very strongly. And after that, the UP came up, but not hugely, and I had a pretty easy ride. So, the following one on the back. So let's have a look at that last thing I want to talk about, which is on the weekend, World Road Championships were held. And this course has been on Zwift for the last couple of months, which is pretty cool. You can ride the world's course on Zwift. And what I wanted to look at particularly was time trial positions, which is something I'm really interested in. And to see the difference between a couple of things. Just to point out the essential difference between what it looks like between the UCI legal time trial position, the type of British time trialing position where they're not subject to those limitations, what the difference is, and then to take away from that, how to tweak your position the best, as far within the limits as possible, for aero drag. So we can see what happens when you're limited, see what happens when you're unlimited, see what the differences are, what can we take from that. If you're in a position where you can run an unlimited position, what is it you want to do to help? What are some basics we can take away from this? And also, I'll show you a couple of little interesting tweaks here about what the pro riders do to stay within UCI limits but push the boundary. A couple of new little bits of tech here that are quite interesting. So let's talk about the UCI legal position first. Here's some photos from the weekend. World Time Trial Champs. I think I'll be Friday or Thursday, something like that. Okay, so there's two. I won't go into it. There's limitations on how far the saddle nose can be as it relates to a vertical plane to the bottom bracket spindle. But the biggie that everyone's focusing on at the moment is not that rule. It's the rule which is maximum of 10 centimeters, 100 millimeters, vertical between the pads the elbows sit on, here if you're looking at the screen, and the top of the aero extensions out in front of you. Now, interesting thing about that is if you're not running DI2, the lever, the shift lever, on the end does count for part of that horizontal. So in its uppermost position, takeaway from that is that if you're running a shifter electronic system like DI2, you're at a slight advantage because you can have a slightly more aero position because you don't have to have the bars up a little more. I'll show you what it matters. So that's the main thing in this whole part I want you to concentrate on looking at these pictures. Now, we're just thinking about that in mind. I've mentioned before, you kind of want to have the aero, your hands generally together, and up in front of you, your head down, forming that type of aero pointedness at the front, deflecting airflow around your body. The other version of that you can do is kind of like go completely the opposite way. Have your hands low in relationship to your head to have 2 points of entry to the wind. Your hands down low, your head up high. And there was less aero drag from doing that. The worst kind of thing is having it in the middle, which is somewhat what the the UCI position kind of forces you into somewhat. So let's have a look at what, in the UCI legal positions at the Worlds, what riders' setups look like. So here we've got Paddy Bevan from New Zealand. Get the screen in front of you. Classic UCI legal T2 position. His torso angle isn't actually that low. So, and his head's relatively high compared to his back. So, you know, he could, just depending on his flexibility and things, he may even potentially be able to, I'm not going to tell, improve on that one a little bit. Where's my towel? Where's my towel? Right, so let's look at the next dude. We'll talk about who's got good positions. So look, it's TJ Van Garderen. He's always had a pretty low hip angle, relatively high hands. So again, it's sort of similar, maybe slightly lower version of what Paddy Bevan had. You can see he's got his elbows, his wrists kind of bent to accentuate the height as much as possible, sort of to falsely accentuate the height of his hands at the front, sort of virtually. Alex Dowsett. So he's got, you can see there, running what will be the maximum 10 centimetres vertical height here in the pads, top of the bars, slightly lower hip angle, and his helmet a little more in line with his torso. Pretty good aero there. Sharon Anderson. You can see he's got his head down a little, but his helmet would be quite in line with his back. Again, same hand position, he's just running classic ski bars, maximum height difference possible, tucking his head a little there for a little extra aero on that particular section. Nelson, Lavera, same. That's interesting. Stephen Kung, he's got a really long position. It might be sort of like he's got a short torso, so it sort of looks like that. Low head and relative to his body. So his head is relative to his torso, very good. Classic hand position. Witowski, classic position. This dude here has a slightly different version. Pavel Sevikov, he runs the second version I was talking about, which is the low hands. See if there's another, no there isn't. See if you look at his hands, it's not the greatest angle, but much lower. So he's got it almost flat, almost 90 degrees between, or almost a horizontal plane between the position of his elbow pads and his hands. Again, nice helmet in line with torso, but he's going for that second version of having 2 points of entry to the wind, hands together and low versus the high. So that's what he's gone for. Presumably he's gone to aero testing and found that for him, that his body shape, whatever, actually turns out to be slightly slipperier in that low hand position. So you can't take the high hands for granted when you're running an UCI legal event. Here's an interesting one. Ryan Mullen from Ireland, he's done the move where it's really the same, legal bars, everything, but you can see his head, he must have worked on this very strongly. It's very low and straight relative to his torso. He's looking, you know, you can think about his field of vision as relatively low, but quite aero, how his head and face running that gyro aero head are relatively close to his hands. It takes practice. You might say, well, it's do that all the time. Well, the main reason is because it's hard. It's hard to produce power in that position. You probably have to have the right body shape, and you've got to practice not only in that position, but producing power in that position. It's hard. That looks like a slippery position to me. Brandler, it's kind of got that long torso thing going. So let's have a look forward here. Oh, of course we've got Rohan Dennis. He's got kind of a version a bit like that. He's got a low head relative to hands, just like the Irish guy, a slippery position, and obviously good time trialist, a powerful rider. Dumoulin is like that as well. So you look at that, quite low. He could. Dumoulin's position will be as good as it can be in the UCI position because he would have had a lot of testing. So if you don't want to know what he's about 1.85 meters tall, same as me, very similar rider, although obviously a little skinnier bastard. But if you want to know what a good position for a rider of that size looks like, which isn't always easy, that will be fantastic. Look at that plane. His head is almost below the arch of his back. And that will be, it's like a bullet. If you just maybe coloured in the lateral view there, you would see that he's presenting very little as far as his head and torso go to the wind, and his hands are kind of where his hands have to be. Okay, so that's oh, here's one good one. This one I put in here. Victor Campenaerts from Belgium. He's got basically like what I was talking about, the best, well, not the best necessarily, but just an extremely low hip ankle position. It might be exaggerated a little in the picture, but look at how his torso is basically flat. His head, you can imagine if he wasn't looking up the road in that picture, it would almost be below his torso. It's almost too low, if that's possible. His hands, again, he's got that slightly accentuated sort of hump in his elbows to sort of do that virtual, add a little virtual height to the front of the bars over and above the limitations on where you can actually set them in the UCI. He had a good ride in that very slippery position. Oh, Kirienka has that rear low hands position. There's Rohan Dennis in full flight, head really low. Again, if you want to know what good TT position looks like, Dennis, Dumoulin, fantastic. See, these angles gives you a little idea how hands close, you don't want air going between them, hands close. All these pros, hands close, look at that one, Campenaerts, hands forming like a bullet shape on the front almost. Paddy Bevan, so everyone doing some version of that. Hard to do, and as I'd say is like to get good in that position, you've got to practice putting out power in that position. So here's just the second part I was going to say, which is what looks like if you take off some of those restrictions. This isn't probably the best picture I've found, but here's one. What's this? You can see here, I mean, it's pretty obvious. What I'm saying is the main difference is the hands and forearm angle as it relates to the head. So a lot very similar going on here, but when you can bring your hands, your forearms, really like, I'd say the same plane as your eyes, like that's very high, you can form a much, there's the ear doesn't come through into your torso and the middle of your bike area nearly so much, deflects a lot more air around. And the quickest way to get a position like this, by the way, it's a quick and dirty fix. If you've got, say, some ski bar type extensions, really all you want to do, say they're a 20 or 30 or 40, maybe even a 50-degree bend, go ahead, pull them out, flip them around, stick them back. So the piece where you're holding your hands is actually normally in the clamp. So you end up with a much longer, taller, that piece is longer, it comes up much more high in front of your face. By doing that, check if your bars are going to be safe doing that, but I know that's what a lot of pros do. I've done it. It seems to be pretty good as long as you've got good bars. Be careful about how you clamp them. You should be fine. And really, when you are riding, even putting out power in that position, you shouldn't really find there's a lot of pressure on the bars regardless. And I think that picture and the other one sums up a little bit what, if you don't have those restrictions, what you should start looking for in a position. This kind of started mid-2000s with Floyd Landis and a sort of accentuated version of that. I think what happens is they did a lot of tunnel testing, found that position was good, that gave birth to the praying mantis position, because it looks like you've got those praying mantis arms in front of you. And since then, well, two things have happened. The UCI banned it, but in non-UCI races, people have developed it to be maybe more comfortable. And I've also made some special equipment. So you can see here, this is just, I don't actually know what this product is. I just found this on Bike Room. I haven't even had a chance to look at this. Some Morph Tech. I don't know what this is, but if you're looking at the screen, I just wanted to show you what the kind of, maybe an extreme version of a frontal view in the praying mantis position looks like, sort of to the wind. And you can see there, the wind will be directed around your body. You can imagine how fast it would be if you had narrow shoulders. A student who's got relatively wide shoulders like me, what that presents to the wind is very low. And especially if your head and your helmet is kind of in line with your back and your torso. Just on that, famously, you read a book called Faster by Michael Hutchinson, I think, who did some hour record attempts in the late 90s, early 2000s. He was talking about a rider for the Great Britain track team who seriously offered to have his collarbones broken and reset to be shorter. Kind of like the opposite of what the short people do, where they break their legs and try to make them longer. Same thing, but in reverse on your collarbones. So you can bring those collarbones in and improve your aerodynamics for pursuit on the track. Another thing is they talked about the differences between aero drag between skin suits being wet, like you can spit in them, and dry, testing all these sorts of things. And the takeaway from all of that is TT gets pretty anal. It's just details, and it matters, man. It makes a difference. And here's the cool thing, it makes a difference, and you can measure it. Now with power meters, computers, you can measure within a very good range of accuracy what real world difference it's having. So that's what that looks like. So that's the UCI position. It's what looks good if you have to be at a race where they're checking your bike with a jig, national champs and champs, stuff like that. Look at the Moulin, look at Dennis, guys like that. If you want to know if the restrictions are off, try that bar trick. I've done it, I've tested it. It'll buy you quite literally maybe, I don't know, say you're a rider that does 40 kilometers an hour at 300 watts, at least 10 watts, maybe 20 if it's a giant. Try that. And maybe the biggest sort of coach to take away from all this is try positions, test them out in some way that you can control. But most importantly, you've got to ride. If you're going to change your position, ride the position, and don't just ride it at power. And it will feel different. And the more you do, just like the more you ride on an indoor trainer, the better the muscle firing patterns will get, the better you'll get at producing power in the position. So one thing you can do for TT. Alright, there to go, guys, as always. Thanks for listening. Switch your bike for that until you should try and make a couple of cycles. See you on the weekend.